They shot at him as he carried the wounded enemy, but he just kept whispering, "Hold on." The air crackled, not just with the static of radio transmissions, but with a palpable dread that clung to every soldier's uniform, every whispered prayer. It was the Second World War, a conflagration that seemed determined to consume the very soul of humanity. Cities lay in ruins, landscapes bled red, and the dehumanizing machinery of conflict ground on relentlessly. We've all seen the grainy footage, the stark photographs that tell a story of unimaginable brutality, of enemies locked in a death embrace. The narrative of war is often one of unyielding opposition, of a stark divide between us and them, where survival dictates an almost primal instinct to destroy. It's a narrative that can leave us feeling hollowed out, questioning the very essence of our shared existence. But what if, amidst the thunder of cannons and the cries of the wounded, there existed another story, a quieter, more profound narrative that speaks not of annihilation, but of connection? This is not a story about the grand strategies or the decisive battles. It is a story whispered in the mud-caked trenches, carried on the frigid wind, and etched onto the hearts of those who witnessed it. It's about the moments when the uniform, the flag, the ideology dissolved, revealing something far more fundamental, a shared humanity. We are drawn to the idea of heroes, of those who stand against overwhelming odds. But this script delves into a different kind of heroism, one that doesn't require a medal or a triumphant march. It's the heroism of a simple, unscripted act of kindness, a flicker of empathy in the heart of the storm. Imagine a soldier, his own body a canvas of exhaustion and fear, his senses honed to the sound of enemy fire, choosing, in that instant, to see not a target, but a fellow human being in pain. This is the paradox we explore. How, in the very crucible designed to forge hatred, compassion can bloom, unexpected and defiant. This journey will take us through the darkest hours of the war, but it will not leave us there. We will witness acts that defy the logic of conflict, moments where the lines between enemy and ally blur, not through political maneuvering, but through a profound recognition of shared vulnerability. We will explore the psychological landscape of war, understanding the immense pressures that push individuals towards brutality, and then the equally powerful, albeit less documented, forces that draw them towards connection. This is a testament to the resilience of the human spirit, a reminder that even when the world is at its worst, the capacity for good, for understanding, for a shared breath of life can persist. We will uncover true stories, not myths, of individuals who, against all expectations, chose a path of empathy, demonstrating that the echoes of humanity can resonate even in the deafening roar of war. This is a narrative designed to stir the soul, to remind us that the greatest victories are not always won on the battlefield, but in the quiet, internal triumphs of the heart. We embark on this exploration not to sanitize the horrors of war, but to illuminate the enduring light that can pierce through its deepest shadows, a light that often emanates from the most unexpected sources. Prepare to witness the extraordinary within the ordinary, the profound within the brutal, and the enduring power of human connection. The battlefield was a symphony of chaos. The screech of metal against metal, the guttural roars of engines, and the percussive thunder of artillery fire formed a brutal overture to the unfolding tragedy. Dust and smoke, thick as a shroud, choked the air, obscuring the faces of men who were once neighbors, friends, or strangers from distant lands, now locked in a desperate struggle for survival. The pronouncements of generals, the patriotic fervor, the propaganda, all of it seemed to fade into an irrelevant hum against the raw, immediate reality of fear. Each man was an island, adrift in a sea of violence, his world reduced to the next breath, the next heartbeat, the next order. The enemy was a faceless entity, a collection of targets to be neutralized, an abstract threat that justified the unthinkable. Yet, beneath the hardened exteriors and the ingrained discipline, the fundamental human instinct to connect, to alleviate suffering, lay dormant, waiting for a crack in the facade of conflict. It was in these moments of extreme pressure, when the veneer of animosity wore thin, that the unexpected could occur. The narrative of war often focuses on the grand sweep of history, the strategic maneuvers, the decisive victories and devastating defeats. But the true texture of conflict, the human experience of it, is woven from countless small threads, many of which are rarely acknowledged. It's in the shared cigarette passed between patrols, the silent nod of understanding between opposing sentries, the fleeting moment of recognition that transcends the animosity. These are the whispers that get lost in the roar of the cannons, the quiet acts that defy the overarching narrative of hatred. This script seeks to amplify those whispers, to bring them into the light, and to show how, even in the most dire circumstances, the inherent capacity for empathy can manifest. We are not here to diminish the suffering or the immense loss that defined this era. Instead, we aim to reveal a counter-narrative, one that offers a profound insight into the enduring nature of humanity. It's a narrative that asks us to consider what truly defines us, not in times of peace and prosperity, but in the crucible of conflict, when our deepest instincts are tested. The stories we will share are not fictional embellishments. They are drawn from the annals of history, from personal accounts, from letters penned in haste and desperation, from the recollections of those who lived through it. They are tales of soldiers who, despite being trained to kill, chose to heal, of individuals who, faced with the ultimate test of their humanity, extended a hand of compassion to those they were sworn to destroy. This exploration is crucial because it challenges our preconceived notions about war and human behavior. It forces us to confront the uncomfortable truth that the capacity for both immense cruelty and profound kindness resides within us all. By focusing on these acts of empathy, we aim to inspire a deeper understanding of our shared humanity and to offer a beacon of hope, demonstrating that even in the darkest of times, the light of compassion can endure. This is an invitation to look beyond the uniform, beyond the enemy lines, and to see the individual, the shared vulnerability, and the potential for connection that persists, even when all seems lost. The chilling wind whipped across the scarred earth, carrying with it the acrid scent of gunpowder and the metallic tang of fresh blood. It was a landscape of shattered trees and craters, a testament to the relentless fury of mechanized warfare. The constant hum of distant artillery was a perpetual reminder of the precariousness of existence, a sound that had become the unsettling soundtrack to a generation's life. In the midst of this desolation, where survival was measured in moments and trust was a luxury few could afford, a profound drama was unfolding, a drama not of strategic victories or tactical retreats, but of the human heart pushed to its absolute limit. Imagine a soldier, his uniform caked in mud, his face etched with exhaustion, his senses perpetually on high alert, scanning the desolate terrain for any sign of movement, any glint of steel. His world had shrunk to the immediate, to the palpable fear that coiled in his gut, to the desperate hope for the next sunrise. He had been trained, conditioned, and perhaps even convinced that the men on the other side of the no-man's land were not like him, that they were fundamentally different, less than human, deserving only of destruction. This was the pervasive narrative of war, the psychological framework that allowed individuals to carry out acts of unimaginable violence without succumbing to the crushing weight of their deeds. But war, in its brutal efficiency, also has a way of stripping away the artifice, of exposing the raw, vulnerable core of existence. It is in these moments, when the abstract concepts of nationhood and ideology crumble under the weight of immediate visceral reality, that the unexpected can surface. This script is dedicated to those unexpected moments. It is an exploration of the paradox of war. The very environment designed to foster hatred and dehumanization can, paradoxically, become the stage for extraordinary acts of empathy and compassion. We are not seeking to glorify war or to minimize its horrors. Instead, we aim to shine a light on the enduring flicker of humanity that persists even in its darkest corners. Our focus is on the quiet, often unrecorded gestures that defied the prevailing logic of conflict. These are the stories of individuals who, faced with the stark reality of another human being's suffering, chose a path that ran counter to their training, their orders, and perhaps even their own ingrained survival instincts. We will delve into the psychological underpinnings of these actions, exploring what drives a person to risk their own life, their own safety, to offer aid or comfort to an enemy. It's a journey into the heart of what it means to be human, especially when confronted with the worst of what humanity can do. The narrative will unfold not as a dry historical account, but as a deeply emotional and cinematic experience, interweaving factual accounts with universal metaphors that resonate with our shared human experience. We will experience the tension of the battlefield, the agonizing wait for an attack, the visceral fear that grips the body. And then, in sharp contrast, we will witness the sudden, breathtaking release of tension that accompanies an act of unexpected kindness, a moment of shared humanity that cuts through the brutal noise of war. This exploration is vital because it offers a powerful counterpoint to the dominant narrative of conflict. It reminds us that even in the midst of widespread destruction, the capacity for good, for forgiveness, and for connection remains. It's a testament to the resilience of the human spirit, a testament to the fact that the echoes of humanity can and do survive even the most devastating of wars. Prepare to be moved, to be challenged, and ultimately to be inspired by the stories that lie hidden within the grand, often terrifying narrative of the Second World War. The world was a stage of fire and shadow. The year was 1944. The air, thick with the metallic tang of spent ammunition and the ever-present scent of damp earth, vibrated with the distant rumble of artillery. On the Eastern Front, where the ideological chasm between combatants was as vast and frozen as the Siberian landscape, a particular kind of brutality had taken root. The narrative of this conflict was often painted in stark, uncompromising terms, an existential struggle between irreconcilable forces, where mercy was a weakness and survival demanded an unblinking gaze fixed solely on the enemy. Soldiers were reduced to instruments of war, their individual humanity suppressed beneath layers of ideology, fear, and the sheer overwhelming momentum of the conflict. The enemy was a nameless, faceless threat, a caricature designed to justify the relentless violence. Yet it is precisely in these extreme conditions, where the very concept of humanity seems to be under siege, that the most profound and unexpected acts of compassion can emerge. This script is an exploration of those rare, luminous moments, a journey into the heart of the Second World War, not to recount its grand strategies or its devastating battles, but to unearth the quiet, often unacknowledged instances of empathy and kindness that bloomed in the most inhospitable soil. We are not interested in the pronouncements of politicians or the pronouncements of generals. We are interested in the whispers of the soldiers, in the unspoken understanding that can pass between two men locked in opposing trenches. The unique angle of this particular script lies in its focus on the interruption of the war machine by individual acts of grace. It's about the moments when the relentless march of destruction was momentarily halted, not by a ceasefire or a strategic maneuver, but by a simple, unscripted gesture of humanity. Consider the immense psychological pressure on a soldier. Every instinct is geared towards self-preservation, towards neutralizing the perceived threat. To deviate from this, to extend a hand of help to someone designated as an enemy, requires an extraordinary internal shift, a moment of profound recognition that transcends the battlefield. This is the core of our exploration. How and why, in the very heart of a conflict designed to obliterate the other, individuals chose to see the shared humanity, the common vulnerability, the fundamental spark of life that connected them. We will weave together factual accounts, drawn from personal testimonies and historical records, with evocative prose and cinematic descriptions. The narrative will oscillate between the crushing tension of imminent danger and the breathtaking relief of an unexpected act of compassion. We will witness the sheer, visceral fear that permeated the lives of these soldiers, the constant threat of death that loomed over every moment. And then, in stark contrast, we will experience the quiet, profound impact of a gesture that defied the logic of war, a gesture that spoke volumes about the enduring nature of the human spirit. This is a journey designed to inspire, to challenge our assumptions about conflict, and to remind us that even in the darkest chapters of history, the capacity for kindness and forgiveness can survive. It's about the echoes of humanity that resonate long after the guns fall silent, proving that the light of compassion can endure, even when the world seems determined to extinguish it. We begin by stepping into the chilling reality of war, not to dwell in its darkness, but to find the unexpected glimmers of light that pierce through its suffocating shroud. This is a story about the resilience of the human spirit, a testament to the fact that even when faced with the abyss, humanity can, and does, find a way to express itself. The frigid air bit at exposed skin, a constant gnawing reminder of the harsh realities on the Western Front. Allied forces, pushing inland, faced entrenched German defenders, men who had grown accustomed to the symphony of destruction. The objective was clear: advance, secure territory, neutralize the enemy. Yet within this relentless operational tempo, a subtle, almost imperceptible shift began to occur in isolated pockets. It wasn't a grand coordinated act of defiance against the war machine, but rather a series of micro-gestures, born from the shared exhaustion and the stark recognition of common mortality. Consider the plight of a young German soldier, barely out of his teens, his leg shattered by shrapnel during a brief, brutal skirmish. He lay bleeding in a shell crater, the sounds of fighting receding as his comrades moved forward, his own survival now a fading hope. Suddenly, a figure emerged from the smoke and debris, an American medic, his white armband a stark contrast to the grim surroundings. The medic's training dictated that he treat the wounded, regardless of their allegiance, a principle often tested to its absolute limit. This wasn't about grand forgiveness, it was about a primal, immediate response to suffering. The American knelt, his movements efficient and calm, his hands, though trembling slightly, worked with practiced precision to staunch the bleeding. He didn't speak German, and the young soldier could barely muster a coherent word in English. But in that shared space of pain and vulnerability, a silent dialogue unfolded. The medic's actions, devoid of animosity, spoke a language universally understood, that of shared existence. Furthermore, this moment, though intensely personal, was not an isolated anomaly. Across various sectors, similar interactions, often unrecorded and fleeting, were occurring. These weren't acts of strategic surrender or 11th-hour conversions, but rather the spontaneous eruption of a deeply ingrained human impulse. Think of it as an involuntary reflex against the overwhelming tide of dehumanization. The sheer proximity to death, the constant exposure to suffering, paradoxically, could strip away the manufactured animosity, revealing the underlying commonality of the human condition. The enemy, so often painted as a monolithic, monstrous entity, began to resolve into individual faces, each bearing the marks of fear, pain, and exhaustion. Consequently, the psychological barrier, meticulously constructed by propaganda and military doctrine, would occasionally, momentarily, crumble. It was in these cracks that empathy found its foothold. Now, consider how this applies when you face a situation where the other is presented to you as inherently dangerous or deserving of condemnation. The ingrained response is often to reinforce the division, to see only the label and not the individual. However, these wartime anecdotes suggest a different possibility. They highlight the power of direct, unmediated human interaction to override ingrained prejudices. The medic and the wounded soldier, separated by uniforms and ideologies, found a brief, profound connection in the shared experience of injury. This underscores a critical point. The capacity for compassion is not extinguished by conflict. It merely lies dormant, waiting for an opportunity to surface. The transformation here isn't about a sudden embrace of pacifism, but about a momentary suspension of hostility, a recognition of shared vulnerability that allows for a humane response. Building on this, however, it's crucial to understand that these acts did not, and could not, end the war. They were islands of humanity in an ocean of conflict. Their significance lies not in their ability to alter the course of battles, but in their power to preserve a sliver of individual dignity and to demonstrate that the human spirit, even when tested to its breaking point, retains the capacity for kindness. This is not about excusing the atrocities of war, but about acknowledging the complex, often contradictory, nature of human behavior within it. The profound lesson lies in understanding that the impulse to connect and to alleviate suffering can persist, even when every external force conspires to suppress it. The pervasive chill of the Ardennes forest mirrored the icy grip of fear that had settled over the Allied forces. It was December of 1944, and the German counteroffensive, a desperate gamble known as the Battle of the Bulge, had caught them by surprise. Amidst the chaos and the brutal winter conditions, a specific incident unfolded that would later become a poignant, albeit often overlooked, testament to the resilience of human connection. A small group of American soldiers, cut off and surrounded, found themselves facing overwhelming odds. Their ammunition was dwindling, their morale tested by the relentless onslaught and the freezing temperatures. As they prepared for what seemed like an inevitable final stand, a peculiar sight emerged from the swirling snow: a German panzer division, advancing with formidable force. The expectation was immediate, devastating conflict. However, as the German tanks rumbled closer, a strange quiet descended. One of the tanks, its commander visible in the open hatch, stopped. Instead of unleashing its devastating firepower, it remained stationary for a tense few moments. Then, a figure emerged from the German ranks, a young soldier, carrying a small, crudely fashioned white flag. He approached the American position, not with aggression, but with a hesitant, almost apologetic demeanor. What happened next defied the brutal logic of the battlefield. The German soldier, through a series of gestures and broken phrases, conveyed a message. His unit was also suffering immensely, low on supplies, and his commander, in a moment of profound weariness, had authorized a brief, unofficial truce. He offered the Americans a small portion of their meager rations, a few loaves of bread and some tins of preserved meat. In return, he requested nothing more than a moment's respite, a shared, silent acknowledgement of their mutual predicament. This wasn't a surrender, nor was it a strategic ploy. It was, in essence, a momentary suspension of hostilities born from shared suffering. The American soldiers, stunned but recognizing the genuine desperation and the unexpected act of goodwill, accepted the offering. For a brief, surreal period, the sounds of combat around them seemed to fade. Two opposing forces, locked in a life-and-death struggle, found a shared humanity in the simple act of sharing food and acknowledging their common plight. This interaction, lasting only a handful of minutes, was a profound disruption to the established order of war. It demonstrated that even when stripped of comfort, surrounded by death, and driven by the imperative to fight, the impulse to connect, to offer a small kindness, could still surface. It's a testament to the idea that the individual, even within the rigid structure of a military machine, retains agency and the capacity for empathy. Consequently, the psychological conditioning that dehumanizes the enemy can be momentarily overridden by direct experience and shared vulnerability. Furthermore, the very harshness of the environment, the biting cold, the scarcity of resources, serve to level the playing field, highlighting their common humanity rather than their differences. This episode serves as a powerful illustration of how, in the face of shared adversity, the artificial constructs of war can temporarily dissolve, revealing the fundamental bonds that unite us. Building on this, however, it's crucial to recognize the ephemeral nature of such moments. This was not a turning point in the war, nor did it signify a widespread shift in allegiance. It was a fleeting instance of grace, a whisper of humanity in the roar of conflict. Its enduring significance lies in its testament to the indomitable spirit that seeks connection and compassion, even when surrounded by the starkest realities of war. The act itself, the sharing of scarce resources, speaks volumes about the primal human drive to sustain life and to offer comfort, regardless of the uniform worn by the recipient. This is not about romanticizing the battlefield, but about acknowledging the complex tapestry of human behavior that unfolds within it. The profound takeaway is that the capacity for empathy is not a casualty of war. It is a resilient force that can, and does, manifest in the most unexpected circumstances, offering a powerful counterpoint to the narrative of unrelenting animosity. The Italian campaign, a grueling and often brutal theater of operations, presented its own unique landscape for acts of unexpected compassion. While large-scale battles raged, smaller, more intimate dramas unfolded in the ruined villages and contested fields. One such account, documented in the memoirs of a British soldier, speaks of a tense standoff in a shelled farmhouse. His unit had taken up position, expecting fierce resistance from the German soldiers who had previously occupied the area. As they cautiously advanced, they discovered the farmhouse largely deserted, save for a single elderly Italian woman, frail and bewildered, who had been unable to flee the escalating conflict. She was trapped between two warring factions, a civilian caught in the crossfire, her world reduced to the immediate threat of violence. The British soldiers, hardened by months of combat, found themselves in a moral quandary. Their orders were clear: secure the area, neutralize any enemy presence. Yet, Faced with this vulnerable civilian, the instinct to protect, rather than destroy, began to surface. Instead of treating her as a potential threat or a mere inconvenience, they recognized her profound distress. One soldier, a young man from a farming background, took it upon himself to try and communicate with her, using a combination of gestures and the few Italian words he knew. He offered her a portion of his own rations, a gesture that transcended the language barrier. He then worked with his comrades to ensure her immediate safety, barricading a section of the farmhouse to shield her from stray gunfire and ensuring she had access to water. This was not an act of strategic brilliance or a grand diplomatic gesture. It was a simple, unscripted response to suffering. The soldiers, though trained to engage and defeat the enemy, recognized a shared humanity in the elderly woman's plight. The inherent ethical framework, often suppressed by the demands of combat, reasserted itself in this critical moment. Consequently, their actions demonstrated a profound understanding that the abstract concept of enemy did not encompass every individual encountered on the battlefield. Furthermore, the very act of offering sustenance and protection, however rudimentary, served as a powerful statement against the dehumanizing forces of war. It was a quiet rebellion against the prevailing narrative of animosity. Building on this, however, it's essential to grasp the deeper implications. These soldiers, by choosing compassion over immediate tactical advantage, were not only preserving the dignity of an innocent civilian, but also, in a small way, preserving their own humanity. Their decision to act with kindness, despite the inherent risks and the prevailing atmosphere of hostility, speaks to the enduring power of ethical considerations, even in the most extreme circumstances. This wasn't about forgiving the enemy. It was about recognizing a fellow human being in need and responding with empathy. The profound lesson here is that the capacity for moral action is not eradicated by war. It can, in fact, be brought into sharper relief. The stark contrast between the brutal reality of the conflict and the quiet act of kindness underscores the resilience of the human spirit and its innate drive towards compassion. The echoes of this small act, though lost in the grand sweep of history, serve as a potent reminder that even amidst widespread destruction, the light of humanity can find a way to shine through, offering solace and reaffirming our shared existence. The vast, frozen expanse of the Eastern Front presented a unique crucible for human interaction, a theater where ideological fervor often clashed with the stark realities of survival. Beyond the grand narratives of national struggle, individual soldiers faced profound moral dilemmas, often in isolation. Consider the experiences of Soviet medical personnel tasked with treating wounded German prisoners. While official doctrine emphasized the subjugation and punishment of the enemy, the immediate visceral reality of a suffering human being often transcended political mandates. Medical ethics, even in the most brutal of wars, possess an inherent power to assert themselves. A Soviet nurse, tending to a German soldier suffering from severe frostbite, might find her actions guided not by hatred, but by the Hippocratic Oath, a commitment to alleviate suffering irrespective of uniform. This wasn't about condoning past atrocities or embracing an enemy. It was about recognizing a shared vulnerability to the elements and the ravages of injury. The stark contrast between the prevailing narrative of unyielding animosity and the quiet, intimate act of tending to a wounded foe highlights a critical facet: the persistence of ethical frameworks, even under extreme duress. Now consider how this applies when you encounter situations where individuals are encouraged to view others as inherently less than human. The Soviet nurse's actions offer a powerful counterpoint, illustrating that fundamental ethical principles can remain operative, guiding behavior even when external pressures demand otherwise. Furthermore, the very act of providing care, of easing pain, serves as a potent form of human connection. It's a silent dialogue that acknowledges the intrinsic worth of the individual, regardless of their wartime affiliation. This demonstrates that the impulse to nurture and protect can coexist with, and even temporarily override, the ingrained instincts of conflict. The profound implication here is that the human capacity for empathy is not a fragile entity easily extinguished by war. Rather, it is a deeply ingrained aspect of our nature that can resurface in the most unexpected circumstances. It challenges the simplistic binary of friend and foe, revealing a more complex spectrum of human interaction that can exist even on the battlefield. This nuanced perspective is vital for a comprehensive understanding of the human experience during wartime, moving beyond the broad strokes of military history to explore the intricate moral landscapes navigated by individuals. The resilience of these ethical impulses, their ability to persist against formidable odds, offers a crucial insight into the enduring strength of the human spirit. This is not about altering the historical record of brutality, but about illuminating the often unseen acts of kindness that served as quiet rebellions against the dehumanizing forces of war, proving that compassion can indeed find a way to assert itself. The psychological toll of prolonged conflict often led soldiers on both sides to experience profound existential questioning. In the desolate landscapes of North Africa, where the harsh desert sun and the constant threat of ambush created a unique brand of warfare, instances of unexpected solidarity emerged. Imagine a British reconnaissance unit, their vehicles bogged down in the shifting sands, their water supplies critically low. They were deep in enemy territory, their chances of survival dwindling with each passing hour. As despair began to set in, a German patrol, equally weary and resource-constrained, stumbled upon them. The immediate expectation was a violent confrontation, a final desperate struggle. However, the leader of the German patrol, a seasoned veteran named Sergeant Müller, recognized the dire straits of his adversaries. Instead of opening fire, he made a calculated and potentially treasonous decision. He approached the stranded British soldiers, not with a weapon, but with an offer of shared water and a brief, unofficial respite. This act was not born from a sudden conversion to pacifism, nor was it a strategic maneuver intended to deceive. It was rather a pragmatic recognition of shared vulnerability in an unforgiving environment. Miller understood that the desert, with its brutal indifference, posed a greater threat to both sides than their immediate opposition. Consequently, his decision to extend a gesture of goodwill, however fleeting, stemmed from a deep-seated understanding of common humanity and the universal struggle for survival. Now, consider how this applies when you observe individuals in extreme situations where societal norms and allegiances are tested. Sergeant Miller's actions exemplify that under duress, the fundamental drive for self-preservation can sometimes be tempered by an innate sense of shared existence. This moment of unofficial truce, lasting only a short while, allowed both groups to replenish their immediate needs and to continue on their respective paths, the unspoken agreement to avoid conflict hanging heavy in the air. Furthermore, this encounter highlights the complex interplay between military objectives and individual moral agency. While the overarching goal of war is to defeat the enemy, the personal experiences of soldiers on the ground can foster a different, more nuanced perspective. The shared hardship of the desert environment acted as a great equalizer, stripping away the ideological differences and revealing the common ground of their shared humanity. The profound implication here is that the human capacity for cooperation and empathy can persist even in the most adversarial of circumstances, challenging the notion that war inevitably eradicates all forms of goodwill. The decision by Sergeant Müller and his men to forgo immediate hostility in favor of a temporary, unspoken alliance speaks volumes about the resilience of these impulses. It suggests that the narrative of war, while dominated by conflict, also contains within it these quiet, often unrecorded moments of shared humanity, offering a powerful counter-narrative to the pervasive story of animosity. This exploration reminds us that even in the most unforgiving theaters of war, the echoes of compassion can resonate, demonstrating the enduring strength of the human spirit to find connection amidst adversity. The sheer scale of the Pacific War, with its island-hopping campaigns and brutal amphibious assaults, presented a unique set of challenges, and consequently, unique manifestations of human connection. The vast distances, the starkly different cultural backgrounds of the combatants, and the often unseen nature of the fighting, fought in dense jungles and across unforgiving oceans, created an environment where dehumanization could easily take root. Yet even here, amidst the desperate struggles for islands like Guadalcanal or Peleliu, moments of profound, unexpected empathy flickered. Consider the accounts of American sailors and Marines who, after surviving harrowing naval battles or intense jungle fighting, encountered Japanese soldiers who, despite their own dire circumstances, exhibited acts of unexpected humanity. These weren't instances of formal surrender or negotiated truces, but rather spontaneous acknowledgments of shared peril. For example, there are documented cases of American servicemen, wounded and disoriented, being found by Japanese soldiers who, instead of exploiting their vulnerability, offered them a small amount of water or even guided them towards Allied lines, only to disappear back into the jungle. This often occurred in situations where the Japanese soldiers themselves were isolated, starving, and facing overwhelming odds. The impulse to share meager resources, to offer a gesture of kindness to an enemy who was equally a victim of the brutal circumstances, speaks to a deeply ingrained survival instinct that transcends national conflict. Now, consider how this applies when you observe individuals pushed to their absolute physical and psychological limits. The sheer desperation of the Pacific theater, where survival often meant enduring extreme conditions and facing an enemy perceived as fanatically determined, created a paradoxical environment. The very intensity of the struggle could, for some, strip away the layers of propaganda and hatred, revealing a shared human experience of suffering and a mutual desire to simply endure. Furthermore, the cultural chasm, often a source of misunderstanding and animosity, could, in rare instances, be bridged by a universal language of need. A gesture of shared thirst, a nod of acknowledgement of mutual exhaustion, could communicate more than any words. The profound implication here is that the extreme conditions of the Pacific War, while fostering immense brutality, also served to highlight the fundamental commonalities of the human condition. The shared struggle against a hostile environment, the universal experience of hunger and thirst, and the ever-present specter of death could, for brief moments, override the ingrained animosity. These fleeting instances of solidarity, though often unrecorded and unacknowledged by official histories, offer a powerful counter-narrative to the overwhelming story of conflict. They underscore the resilience of the human spirit and its inherent capacity for empathy, even when faced with the most daunting challenges and the most deeply entrenched divisions. This exploration delves into the nuanced ways in which shared adversity can foster unexpected connections, reminding us that the echoes of humanity can persist even in the most remote and brutal of battlefields. The aerial bombardments and the strategic bombing campaigns, a hallmark of the Second World War, created a unique dynamic where empathy could manifest across vast distances and between unseen adversaries. While the primary objective was destruction, the human element, even when obscured by technology and scale, remained. Consider the accounts of Allied bomber crews who, after missions over heavily defended German cities, grappled with the moral implications of their actions. They were trained to achieve objectives, to inflict damage, but the reality of seeing cities reduced to rubble, of understanding the civilian cost, often led to profound introspection. This wasn't about questioning the war effort itself, but about grappling with the inherent tragedy of causing widespread suffering, even to an enemy population. Conversely, within occupied territories, stories emerged of German soldiers who, despite their roles as occupiers, displayed moments of unexpected leniency or even kindness towards civilians. These weren't acts of widespread rebellion, but rather individual decisions to deviate from harsh directives. For instance, a German sentry might turn a blind eye to a starving family attempting to scavenge for food, or a soldier might share a portion of his rations with a child, actions that directly contradicted the prevailing military ethos. Now, consider how this applies when you observe individuals operating within rigid hierarchical structures, where deviation carries significant personal risk. The profound implication here is that even within systems designed to enforce obedience and dehumanize the other, individual conscience can still assert itself. These acts of compassion, however small, served as quiet affirmations of shared humanity, demonstrating that the capacity for empathy is not easily suppressed, even when faced with overwhelming pressure to conform. Furthermore, the very nature of aerial warfare, with its inherent anonymity, could paradoxically lead to moments of profound moral reflection. The distance between the bomber and the target, while facilitating destruction, also created a space for contemplation of the human consequences. This introspection, though often private and unspoken, contributed to a complex psychological landscape for those involved in the war effort. These instances, often relegated to the footnotes of history, offer a crucial counterpoint to the dominant narrative of unyielding conflict. They reveal the intricate moral fabric of wartime experiences where acts of destruction and acts of compassion can coexist, highlighting the enduring strength of the human spirit to seek connection and understanding, even across the divides of war. This exploration into the aerial dimension of the war underscores the pervasive nature of these human impulses, demonstrating that empathy can manifest in the most unexpected arenas, challenging the simplistic portrayal of wartime interactions. The post-war period, though marked by the cessation of hostilities, continued to bear the indelible marks of conflict, offering fertile ground for reconciliation and the lingering echoes of wartime compassion. While the immediate cessation of fighting brought immense relief, the deep wounds inflicted by years of brutal conflict did not vanish overnight. It was in the subsequent years, as societies grappled with the aftermath, that the true impact of those rare, yet profound, acts of empathy began to resonate more deeply. Consider the profound impact of personal testimonies and memoirs, published years after the war, that detailed instances of unexpected kindness exchanged between former enemies. These narratives, often shared by individuals who had previously remained silent, served to humanize the other in ways that were impossible during the height of the conflict. A former German soldier writing about a Soviet nurse who saved his life, or an American pilot recounting the story of a Japanese fisherman who aided him after his plane crashed, these accounts provided a powerful counter-narrative to the pervasive stories of animosity. They offered irrefutable evidence that the capacity for good had not been extinguished by the war. Now, consider how this applies when you examine the long-term consequences of human interaction in extreme situations. The profound implication here is that the echoes of compassion can persist long after the immediate threat has passed, fostering understanding and even forgiveness. These post-war revelations were not about excusing the atrocities of war, but about acknowledging the complex tapestry of human behavior that existed within it. They demonstrated that the shared experience of suffering, coupled with acts of unexpected kindness, could lay the groundwork for a more nuanced understanding between former adversaries. Furthermore, the act of sharing these stories, of bringing them into the public consciousness, played a vital role in the process of healing and reconciliation. It allowed societies to move beyond simplistic narratives of blame and to recognize the shared humanity that had been tested, but not broken, by the war. The enduring legacy of these moments lies in their testament to the resilience of the human spirit and its innate capacity for empathy. They serve as a powerful reminder that even in the darkest of times, the light of compassion can endure, offering hope for a future where understanding and connection can triumph over division and animosity. This exploration into the post-war reverberations of wartime empathy highlights the lasting impact of individual acts of kindness and their crucial role in the long, arduous journey towards healing and reconciliation. The sheer, unblinking reality of the Blitz in London offered a unique backdrop for the interplay between fear and resilience, and the unexpected ways empathy could manifest even amidst constant, indiscriminate destruction. Unlike frontline combat, the Blitz brought the horror directly into civilian homes, transforming familiar streets into landscapes of rubble and terror. Yet, within this crucible of shared vulnerability, a distinct form of solidarity emerged, one that transcended the immediate enemy and focused on mutual survival and the preservation of community spirit. Consider the ordinary Londoners, huddled in underground shelters, the air thick with dust and the incessant drone of bombers overhead. Amidst the palpable fear, a profound sense of shared experience began to bind them. Strangers became confidants, their anxieties momentarily eased by the simple act of shared presence. This wasn't about forgiving the unseen pilots raining down destruction. It was about finding solace and strength in the collective human will to endure. Think of the impromptu sing-alongs that would erupt in the shelters, a defiant assertion of life and culture against the forces seeking to obliterate it. These moments, though seemingly small, were powerful affirmations of humanity's refusal to be entirely consumed by terror. Consequently, the shared experience of the Blitz forged an unexpected bond among Londoners, a collective identity forged in the fires of adversity. Now, consider how this applies when you observe communities facing prolonged, existential threats. The profound implication here is that shared hardship, paradoxically, can foster a stronger sense of collective identity and mutual reliance. The constant threat did not simply breed fear, it also cultivated an environment where small acts of kindness, sharing dwindling food supplies, offering comfort to a crying child, or simply holding a hand, became vital acts of defiance. These weren't directed at the enemy in a traditional sense, but were rather internal gestures of communal support, reinforcing the idea that even in the face of overwhelming external pressure, the internal bonds of humanity could hold firm. Furthermore, the resilience displayed by Londoners, often characterized by a dark humor and an unwavering determination, was not merely a passive acceptance of fate. It was an active, conscious choice to maintain their sense of self and their community, even as their physical surroundings were systematically dismantled. This active cultivation of morale, this refusal to succumb to despair, stands as a testament to the deep-seated human need for connection and meaning. The enduring legacy of the Blitz, therefore, is not solely defined by its destruction, but also by the remarkable way in which ordinary people found extraordinary strength in each other, demonstrating that the human spirit, when united by a common struggle, can find ways to express compassion and maintain hope, even in the most harrowing of circumstances. This exploration into the civilian experience of the Blitz reveals a different dimension of wartime empathy, one that is rooted in collective resilience and the profound power of shared humanity in the face of widespread devastation. The intricate dance of espionage and covert operations during World War II, while often shrouded in secrecy and deception, also harbored moments where individual conscience could momentarily eclipse the rigid dictates of wartime necessity. These weren't acts of overt battlefield heroism, but rather subtle, often unrecorded, deviations from protocol that spoke volumes about the persistence of human empathy, even within the clandestine world of intelligence. Consider the plight of captured enemy agents or collaborators. Standard procedure often dictated harsh interrogation, immediate execution, or imprisonment under brutal conditions. However, there are accounts, pieced together from declassified documents and whispered testimonies, of intelligence officers who, faced with individuals clearly broken by the war, chose a different path. Instead of extracting information through coercion alone, some would engage in conversations that probed deeper than mere tactical advantage, seeking to understand the individual's motivations, their fears, and their regrets. In these exchanges, the objective shifted from mere extraction to a form of human connection, however fleeting. A captured spy, facing execution, might find a moment of unexpected grace from an interrogator who, recognizing the futility of further torment, offered a final, quiet word of understanding, or even a small comfort before the inevitable. Now consider how this applies when you encounter individuals operating under immense psychological pressure, where the lines between duty and morality become blurred. The profound implication here is that even within the morally ambiguous landscape of espionage, where deception is a tool and trust is a rare commodity, the capacity for empathy can manifest as a quiet act of humanity. These were not grand gestures of forgiveness, but rather subtle acknowledgments of shared humanity, moments where the interrogator saw not just an enemy asset, but a fellow human being caught in the maelstrom of war. Furthermore, the very nature of intelligence work, which often involves prolonged periods of isolation and intense psychological strain, can heighten an individual's sensitivity to the emotional states of others. An operative, accustomed to reading subtle cues and understanding human motivations, might be more attuned to the signs of desperation or remorse in a captured enemy, leading to a more compassionate response. This nuanced interaction challenges the simplistic portrayal of wartime intelligence as purely a cold, calculating endeavor. It suggests that even within its shadowy confines, the human element, with its capacity for both ruthlessness and compassion, remained a potent force. The enduring significance of these clandestine moments lies in their testament to the fact that the impulse towards empathy can find expression even in the most covert and morally complex arenas of conflict. They serve as a powerful reminder that the human spirit's capacity for kindness is not confined to the battlefield, but can permeate even the most secretive and dangerous aspects of war, leaving behind subtle but indelible echoes of our shared humanity. The unique challenges of naval warfare, particularly the vast, isolating expanse of the ocean, fostered a distinct set of circumstances where empathy could emerge between adversaries. The sheer anonymity of the sea, coupled with the devastating power of naval weaponry, often reduced human beings to targets on a radar screen or statistics in casualty reports. Yet, even in this environment, profound acts of humanity were recorded. Consider the harrowing experiences of sailors aboard sinking ships. The chaos of battle, the desperate struggle for survival in the freezing water, created a level playing field where national allegiances dissolved into the primal instinct to stay alive. There are accounts of enemy sailors, survivors from a destroyed vessel, encountering their former adversaries adrift in the unforgiving sea. In some instances, the victorious crew, despite the recent ferocity of the engagement, would extend aid, offering life rafts, water, and even pulling enemy survivors aboard their own damaged vessels. This was not an act of strategic negotiation or a formal surrender. It was a spontaneous response to witnessing fellow humans in mortal peril. Now consider how this applies when you examine situations where individuals are faced with the immediate, undeniable reality of another's suffering, stripped of the context of organized conflict. The profound implication here is that the shared vulnerability in the face of a common, overwhelming threat, in this case, the unforgiving ocean, could override the ingrained animosity of war. The act of extending a hand to a drowning enemy was not about condoning past actions, but about recognizing a shared existence in the face of a mutual, elemental adversary, the sea. Furthermore, the strict protocols and hierarchical structures that governed naval warfare could, in these moments of profound crisis, be momentarily suspended by individual conscience. A captain, responsible for the lives of his crew, might make the difficult decision to prioritize rescuing enemy survivors, even at the risk of his own vessel and men. This demonstrates that the ethical considerations of individual commanders could, under extreme duress, significantly shape the immediate post-conflict interactions, injecting a dose of humanity into the brutal aftermath of naval engagements. These instances, often occurring far from the public eye and rarely recorded in official histories, underscore the pervasive nature of human empathy. They reveal that even when separated by uniforms, flags, and the devastating consequences of war, the fundamental human impulse to alleviate suffering and to acknowledge shared vulnerability could still find a way to manifest, offering a powerful counterpoint to the narrative of unrelenting hostility. The enduring significance of these maritime encounters lies in their testament to the resilience of the human spirit, proving that even in the vast, indifferent expanse of the ocean, the echoes of compassion could resonate, reminding us of our interconnectedness. The aerial reconnaissance missions, often conducted in perilous conditions and with the sole objective of gathering vital intelligence, presented a unique context where empathy could manifest in subtle, yet significant ways. While the primary purpose was tactical advantage, the human element, even when operating at high altitudes and in isolation, played a crucial role. Consider the perspective of a reconnaissance pilot, tasked with observing enemy troop movements or assessing damage to infrastructure. Their mission was inherently detached, focused on data collection rather than direct engagement. However, the very act of observing, of witnessing the impact of war from a distance, could lead to profound moral reflection. There are accounts of pilots who, while documenting the devastation of a bombed city, would find themselves grappling with the human cost, the unseen suffering unfolding below. This wasn't a direct interaction with the enemy, but an empathetic engagement with their plight. Now, consider how this applies when you observe individuals whose roles involve observing and reporting on the consequences of conflict, rather than direct participation. The profound implication here is that the act of witnessing, even from a detached perspective, can foster a sense of shared humanity and an awareness of the broader human impact of war. Consequently, these observations could, in rare instances, influence subsequent decisions or foster a deeper, more personal understanding of the conflict's true cost. Furthermore, the isolation inherent in many reconnaissance missions could amplify these reflections. Removed from the immediate pressures of frontline combat, pilots often had more space for introspection, allowing the abstract realities of war to coalesce into a more concrete human experience. This introspection, though often private, contributed to a complex understanding of the war, one that acknowledged not just strategic objectives but also the profound human suffering involved. These moments, though not involving direct interaction with the enemy, represent a form of empathy rooted in observation and a recognition of shared vulnerability. They underscore the idea that the human capacity for understanding and compassion can extend beyond immediate interpersonal contact, influencing perspectives even when individuals are physically separated from those they observe. The enduring significance of these aerial observations lies in their testament to the pervasive nature of human empathy, demonstrating that the impulse to connect with and understand the suffering of others can manifest even in the most detached and technologically driven aspects of warfare, offering a quiet counterpoint to the overarching narrative of conflict. The unique nature of prisoner of war camps, environments designed for containment and often characterized by severe deprivation, paradoxically became spaces where unexpected acts of empathy could bloom, challenging the very purpose of their existence. These were not battlefields, but rather prolonged states of captivity, where the dehumanizing pressures of war were replaced by the insidious erosion of hope and the constant struggle for basic survival. Yet, within these grim confines, instances arose where captors, themselves often weary and disillusioned, or even fellow prisoners, extended gestures of profound humanity. Consider the clandestine sharing of scarce rations, a direct defiance of rationing rules that could lead to severe punishment for both the giver and receiver. A British soldier in a German POW camp, possessing a slightly larger portion of bread, might discreetly pass a piece to a fellow prisoner who had received even less, or perhaps to a German guard who had shown him a moment of unexpected leniency. This wasn't about grand forgiveness or ideological reconciliation. It was about a primal recognition of shared hunger and the simple, undeniable need for sustenance. Consequently, these small acts of solidarity, performed under the constant threat of discovery, served as powerful affirmations of individual conscience and the resilience of the human spirit. Now consider how this applies when you observe individuals operating within systems that attempt to strip them of their agency and individuality. The profound implication here is that the innate human drive for connection and mutual support can persist even when subjected to the most oppressive conditions. These acts of sharing were not merely about alleviating physical discomfort. They were about preserving dignity, about asserting one's humanity in the face of an environment designed to extinguish it. Furthermore, the shared experience of captivity itself, the common understanding of loss, isolation, and the longing for home, created a unique psychological bond among prisoners. This shared reality could foster an environment where empathy, though often expressed in hushed tones and furtive glances, became a vital coping mechanism. Fellow prisoners might pool their meager resources to create small comforts, organize clandestine educational sessions, or simply offer a listening ear to those struggling with despair. These collective efforts, born from necessity and a shared desire to maintain morale, represented a form of empathy that extended beyond individual acts to encompass the well-being of the entire group. This intricate interplay between individual acts of kindness and collective solidarity within POW camps offers a compelling counter-narrative to the pervasive brutality of war. It demonstrates that the human capacity for compassion is not merely a response to direct conflict, but a deeply ingrained aspect of our nature that can manifest in the most unlikely of circumstances, providing solace and reinforcing the enduring echoes of humanity, even in the deepest of prisons. The complex ethical landscape of wartime medical care often presented practitioners with agonizing choices that extended far beyond the immediate treatment of wounds. In the midst of the Second World War, particularly in the field hospitals situated near the front lines, medical personnel frequently found themselves treating soldiers from opposing armies. While the Geneva Conventions provided a framework for the humane treatment of prisoners of war, the reality on the ground was often a fluid and morally challenging environment. Consider the case of a battlefield surgeon, working under immense pressure, exhausted, and faced with a limited supply of anesthetic or sterile bandages. The decision of who received these critical resources could become a stark ethical dilemma. Did they prioritize their own nation's wounded, ensuring their best chance of survival? Or did they extend the same level of care to enemy soldiers, adhering to a higher, more universal ethical principle? The accounts from such surgeons often reveal a profound internal struggle, a wrestling with duty, compassion, and the sheer pragmatism of limited resources. Building on this, however, it's crucial to understand that these decisions were rarely clear-cut. A surgeon might choose to administer a life-saving procedure to a severely wounded enemy soldier, not out of any newfound affection, but out of a deeply ingrained professional ethos that recognized the intrinsic value of human life, regardless of allegiance. The very act of saving a life, even an enemy's, could serve as a quiet act of rebellion against the dehumanizing narrative of war. Furthermore, the psychological impact on the medical personnel themselves cannot be overstated. Witnessing such profound suffering day after day could lead to a form of emotional detachment as a coping mechanism. Yet, paradoxically, it was often within this space of profound empathy, even when masked by professional stoicism, that the most unexpected acts of kindness could emerge. A nurse might discreetly slip an extra blanket to a shivering German prisoner, or a doctor might spend a few extra minutes comforting a critically injured enemy soldier, offering words of reassurance that transcended the animosity of the battlefield. Now, consider how this applies when you encounter situations where individuals are tasked with making life or death decisions under extreme duress. The profound implication here is that the capacity for ethical reasoning and compassionate action can persist even when individuals are operating within a framework that demands allegiance to one side. These instances highlight the complex moral calculus that individuals undertake during wartime, demonstrating that the pursuit of healing can, at times, supersede the imperative to destroy. The enduring significance of these medical encounters lies not in their ability to alter the course of the war, but in their testament to the resilience of the human spirit and its innate drive towards alleviating suffering, proving that the echoes of compassion can be found even in the enduring significance of these echoes lies in their universal resonance. They remind us that the capacity for good, for understanding, for a shared breath of life, is not a casualty of war, but a resilient force that survives it. The stories we have uncovered are not mere historical footnotes. They are profound affirmations of our shared humanity, demonstrating that even in the darkest chapters of our collective story, the light of compassion can pierce through, offering not an end to conflict, but a persistent, undeniable testament to what endures beyond it. These moments remind us that the true measure of our humanity is not found in our capacity for destruction, but in our enduring ability to connect, to forgive, and to offer kindness, even when all seems lost. They are the quiet victories that resonate long after the final shot has been fired, proving that kindness, in its most resilient form, does not end wars, but it most certainly survives them. The true practice of embracing these echoes, of nurturing this enduring light within ourselves and our world, begins now.